Hello, this video is for IXL Activity 8.W.13 and it is titled Solve Equations, Complete the Solution. And our three-character code for this is Papa Golf Hotel. So how this activity works is that they've done part of the problem for you and you have to fill in the blanks and explain what's going on. The right side of the column, whenever I say explain what's going on, is that we have the math going on over here in the left column, right? And then in the right column, we have the explanations explaining what's happening as we go from line to line. If you've ever done a geometry proof, this is very much like a geometry proof where one column shows your work, the other one shows the explanation that you shows each step, right? So in this one here, it says complete the process of solving the equation, fill in the missing term on each line, and simplify any fractions. So on the first one here, whenever we go from this line to this line here, whenever we move from one to the other, they're already telling us that we divide both sides by 5. And right here, what's happening is they've divided by 5, and those 5s canceled each other out. We ended up with just what's in the denominator. And this should be usual to us. Normally, many people, or many of you who have been taking my classes, might think that, okay, first I need to distribute both of this in here, and I'm going to get 5D plus 10, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add, or subtract 10 from each side, and would that work? 5D, am I doing that right? 10, am I getting in a hurry? No, I'm okay, I'm good to go. Yeah, because I'm seeing that this is going to equal 0, right? 5D equals 0, and D is going to equal, because I'm going to divide by 5, right? And D is going to equal 0, so in the end, it should equal 0. Let's see if we end up with the same thing there. But this is a move that we can make here. Dividing by 5 does work, because it's 5 times something, right? It's 5 times something, and we've seen that before. 5 times, like, X, something. And what happens if we divide by 5? The 5s cancel each other, and we're just left with the X. Well, same thing here. We've divided by 5, and we're just left with that numerator that we have up there. So if this looks a little awkward or strange and you're not familiar with it, then that's what's going on. So we divide by 5. Well, what happens whenever we divide 10 by 5, right? What you do to one side, we do to the other. Well, 10 divided by 5 is going to be 2. Now, we would then subtract 2 from each side, right? So once we subtract 2 from each side, well, 2 minus 2 is, yes, indeed, 2 minus 2 is going to cancel those out, leaving us with just D. I'm trying to make it look like it does whenever we work those out. And what I do to one side, I do to the other. 2 minus 2 is indeed 0. So try to get in there and get that. There we go. So this is what our final solution would look like. Just fill in those blanks there. On the next one, we have here, and then we go to this step here. Well, they're already telling us to divide both sides by 19, right? So you notice that this matches this. Well, we've seen that before. If we have x over 19 and we multiply by 19, the 19s cancel each other and we're just left with x. Well, that's the same thing that's happened here, is that we've divided by the 19, right? Well, or multiply by the 19, but what we do to one side, we need to do to the other. The 19s would have canceled each other, and we were just left with the numerator, which we see right here. And then 5 times 19, that should be 50. That should be 95. All right, so let's clear up a lot of that. And then let's go ahead and look at our next step. In the next step, it looks like, well, what do we need to do? Subtract 20, which is what they tell us. Subtract 20 from both sides. We do to one side, we do to the other. Those 20s would cancel each other out, leaving us with just the A. And then 95 minus 20 would be 75. So our final solution would look like this. On the next one, we have find the missing term and select the missing description and simplify any fractions. So now we have to put stuff in over here. And you don't have to write it in. There'll be a drop-down box. You click that, and then all the different choices will drop down, and then you pick from the list of choices of what the correct choice is. So it looks like what we've added 2, right? Plus 2 and plus 2. And does that make sense? Because those 2's cancel each other out. We're just left with the a over 2. And negative 17 plus 2 is indeed 15. So it looks like we add 2 to both sides. And then after that, it looks like we multiplied times 2. Times 2. Those would cancel each other out, leaving us with just a. Negative 15 times 2 is negative 30. So whenever we're done, it all looks like that. On the next one, looks like we get 4p here. We're going to get that from 16p and 12p. 16 minus 12 is 4. So we combine like terms, and I'm just going to put CLT for combine like terms. And there's our negative 13 still there, and our 5p, everything else comes down. So that's first step, is to combine like terms. Then they tell us to subtract 5 from both sides, or 5p from both sides, right? So minus 5p, that's going to cancel those, leaving us just the negative 2. Good to go. And 4 minus 5p is going to be negative 1p, so negative p, right? And we're good to go on that step. The next thing we would do, looks like we get down to just the negative p, so we must have added 13, right? Plus 13, and sure enough, negative 2 plus 13 is 11. So this checks out, so we added 13 to both sides. Add 13 to both sides. It won't take you as long, you just have to hit a drop-down button on it. And then we divide both sides by negative 1. And that's going to give us negative 11, right? We talked about how to make this. If we end up with a negative variable there, and we're going to make it a positive by dividing by negative 1. Moving along, I'm going to have to do some distributive property, definitely, right here, right? Into there. And we can see the 9 times 7 to get the 63. So it's the 9 times negative 3. It's going to be negative 27, and we need the r, goes along with it. So we type in negative 27r, and this step right here is the distributive property. Next, it looks like we're probably going to combine like terms. Right here, we have negative 27r and a positive 11r. So we're going to add those together. Negative 27 plus 11. So we're adding a positive and negative number. So we're actually going to take 27 and subtract 11. And 6 and 1, right? So it's 16, and since the negative 27 has a greater absolute value, and it's negative, we're going to make our answer negative. So it's a negative 16r. So let's go ahead and clear all that up. And we'll clear this as well. Kind of want to keep it looking neat and tidy so we don't get too confused here. The next thing to do is what's going on next. It looks like, notice the negative 15r just disappeared from this side. So apparently, and what do we do here? We combine like terms, didn't we? Combine like terms. So to get from this line to that line there, it looks like we are going to add 15r. That's going to get rid of that. So we're going to add 15r to both sides. Keep forgetting to put the E in there. And whenever we do that, 16 plus 15 is going to be, should be 31, right? Right, 16 plus 15, 30, yep. 15 plus 15 is 30, yep. So 31, and 31, what? 31R. The next step that we need is to subtract 63 from each side. And I just paused because I'm like, something's not working out right. Let's back up. Remember, I messed up. This is a negative 16R. So I messed that up. If you're thinking, hey, Mr. T, that's supposed to be a negative, you would be correct. So whenever I add 15 to each side. Negative 16 plus 15 is a negative r. Because I'm looking at this right here and I'm like, where's that going to? I'm like, oh, I messed up and that should be a negative there. So if it's not making sense, go back and double check your work. You never know whenever you might have made a mistake like I do. So the next thing to do is, it looks like we're going to subtract 63 from each side. So minus 63. So we're actually adding two negative numbers together over here. And so it's going to get more negative. And 63 plus 11 is going to be 74. Right? So we're at that point there. We're good to go. And whenever we did that, that was by, we add, and I think they're going to say subtract. I better go ahead and put this here. They're going to say that we subtract 63 from both sides. I'm pretty sure they're going to say subtract. It could be we actually added a negative 63. I think that the activity actually says that you subtract 63 from both sides. And now we're going to get r equals 74 because we divide by negative 1. Divide both sides by negative 1. All right. First line to the second line, we have to see what's going on and give the explanation for what happened, the description as they call it, and these are the missing terms. So I'm going to say that we combine like terms right here and right here. So we have a negative 6 and negative 13. It is in terms of v, and negative 6 plus negative 13 is going to be a negative 19. Don't want to forget that negative sign this time. And the next step is, we combine like terms. That's our reasoning there. And then the next thing we did is, it looks like that we're adding 13v, right? Plus 13v. So we add 13v to both sides. And whenever we do that, so plus 13v, and negative 19 plus 13, negative 19 plus 13, we're adding a negative and positive number, so we're actually going to subtract, and we end up with 6. And since 19 has a greater absolute value, that's a negative 6. So negative 6 what? Negative 6v. And let's clean this up a little bit. Get in there with the tiny eraser. There we go. Go back to the big eraser. Get that stuff there. And so we've got that step. The next thing it looks like we're going to do is subtract minus 15 from each side. Let's subtract 15 from each side. So I'm pretty sure they're going to say subtract 15 from both sides. It's actually the same from both sides. We could also say that we're adding a negative 15, but again, I'm pretty sure they say subtract. So those cancel each other out, right? And so we'd have our 6v, and then 3 minus 15 is going to give us a negative 12. And so we'll go to medium eraser. I think that'll work. And then from there, looks like we need to divide by negative 6, right? Divide both sides by negative 6. So divide both sides. And the nice thing about it is they put those numbers in for you. Both sides by negative 6. Whenever I say they put those numbers in, you'll see divide both sides by, one of the choices would be divide both sides by negative 6. It might say negative 3 or 3. It might have one of these other numbers to distract you, but at least it's going to be in there to find what you want there. So we're dividing both sides by negative 6. So negative divided by negative is positive. 12 divided by 6 is 2. So v would equal 2. And for the final one here, got quite a few terms we're missing and quite a few descriptions. Shouldn't be too big of a deal. I'm seeing parentheses here, so that's most likely what? Distribution, right? Distributive property. So we'll put distributive property. And we have negative 18 times c is negative 18, so that's good to go. And negative times negative is positive, and 18 times 1 is 18, so plus 18. So we're good to go with that part. we use the distributive property. Now let's go from this line to the next line. Looks like, yeah, they're going to combine like terms. Notice our 18 comes to here, and we're combining this and this. So negative 18 plus 9. So you could be thinking about it. The way I see this is, in my head, is I'm at negative 18, and here's 0, and I'm adding 9, right? Well, that gets me halfway back to 0. So I'm adding 9, and that actually gets me to negative 9, because 9 plus 9 is 0. So here's 9, here's 9. So that's kind of what's going on in my head. I could have gone ahead and done it, negative 18 plus 9, and say, oh, okay, I'm adding a negative and a positive number, so I actually have to subtract. And then the 18 has a greater absolute value, so the answer would match the 18, the negative 18, with the greater absolute value. So I'm going to end up with, and I'm really going to confuse myself here. Remember, Mr. T, that is a 9, negative 9, C is what we want there. All right, let's clean up all of this here real quick. Don't want to get too cluttered and too distracting, so we can see line by line. And in that last step, we combine like terms. So combine like terms. On the next one, it looks like we're going to get this negative 8c is going to go over to the other side, right? Looks like we're sending it over here because all we have is the negative 10. So if we do that, let's see, we're adding 8, right? Add 8c to each side. So add 8c to both sides. And whenever we do that, we have negative 9 plus 8. So we're adding a positive and a negative number together, so we actually subtract. And we get a difference of 1, and the negative 9 has a greater absolute value, so that's a negative 1. Negative 1c. Now, remember, we could put a 1 in there, but we don't necessarily have to. So you could write it in, type it in. It won't, IXL won't count it as incorrect, but let's just get used to where and slide that over closer. So negative c. And we can see that apparently we were correct because we have a negative c here as well. So then we see the 18 just kind of disappear from the left. So that means that we must have subtracted 18 from both sides, minus 18. So we subtract 18 from both sides. Again, it might say add negative 18 to both sides, but I'm almost positive it says subtract 18 from both sides. So those will cancel each other out there, and negative 10, and this is actually plus a negative 18, minus 18 is the same as plus negative 18. So I'm adding two negative numbers, so it's going to get more negative, and 10 plus 18 is 28. And I'm down to one last step. Notice that C is in terms of a negative. So we actually need to divide by negative 1. Right? So divide both sides by negative 1. So we divide both sides by negative 1. And whenever we do that, the C is going to become positive. And this will be a negative divided by a negative, gives me a positive. Right, so I don't need to put a plus sign there, silly me. And 28 over 1 is 28. There you go. So if you're shouting at the screen, 28, 28, positive 28, you would be correct. So that is everything I've got for IXL 8.W.13, where we solved equations and we completed the solution. Good luck on your activity.